Did Fani Willis and her one-time lover Nathan Wade lie under oath? The distinct possibility means that not only are they risking being tossed from the case, but they could also be opening themselves up to perjury charges. We watched the other week as the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney made it very clear that she and Wade did not start their romantic relationship until 2022. Even though we heard from a former colleague of Willis's on the stand, the two began exhibiting signs of a romantic partnership, such as hugging and kissing, as early as 2019. Robert Nearty not only worked with Willis, but she also is the one who subletted the condo to Willis, where Wade would reportedly come over. But since the two had a falling out over work performance in 2022, Nearty was painted by Willis's team as being nothing more than a disgruntled former employee with an axe to grind. But now fast forward to today, and a new filing from Trump's lawyers is undoing much of what Willis had confidently asserted. Using data obtained from a subpoena to AT&T, the lawyers employed a law enforcement tool called CellHawk to track the movements of Wade and Willis before 2022. And what it found was quite damning for their defense. Wade visited Willis's condo at least 35 times before their relationship was said to have started. He had said on the stand that number would be less than 10. The timing of his cell phone's movement is curious as well. Check out this example from the filing. Quote, on November 29, 2021, Mr. Wade's phone was pinging on the East Cobb Towers near his residence. And following a call from Miss Willis at 11:32 p.m., while the call continued, his phone left the East Cobb area just after midnight and arrived within the geofence located on the Dogwood address at 12:43 a.m. on November 30th, 2021. The phone remained there until 4:55 a.m. End quote. I wonder what special project they were working on together during those odd hours, which cast suspicion on Wade's previous defense that he wasn't always just in the area for Willis, but because there's restaurants out there, the Porsche Experience Center, and an airport. But those are some odd times to be visiting any of those places. And it would be weird to drive out to where Willis lives late at night while speaking with her on the phone, but then never actually meet up with her. The filing also shows that the pair exchanged about 2,000 phone calls during the year 2021 alone, mostly in the evening hours, and that they texted each other about 12,000 times during that same year. So now the duo not only have to worry that their relationship and all the money they allegedly made off it with this case may be enough for the judge to toss them over conflict of interest and a break in the spirit of the state's anti-nepotism law, but also they risk being slapped with perjury charges. But that will come down to whether or not the judge will allow this new cell phone evidence to be admitted, as Willis and Wade prepared their response to the new filing. However, did you know that the judge in this case, Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee, made a donation to the Willis campaign back in 2020? I know, right? He's a Republican appointee to the court, and yet when he was still working as an assistant U.S. attorney for the Department of Justice, he gave the Willis campaign $150. I know it's not a lot of money, but the optics don't look too great, as now he has to decide whether or not there is a conflict of interest in allowing Wade and Willis to remain on the Trump RICO case. Joining us now to discuss this and a whole lot more is Ian Haworth, the host of Off Limits with Ian Haworth. Ian, thanks for being here tonight.
Thanks as always for having me.
Great. So does it seem like the confident hopes of Willis and Wade are perhaps sinking fast in light of these new developments?
Yeah, I mean, this is possibly the most embarrassing booty call in the history of politics, isn't it? I mean, how many times have you had a call from a coworker at 11:30 p.m., rushed across town and just happened to, I guess, sit outside in the street for 4 or 5 hours and then just go home? This is really quite laughable. It's like something out of a sitcom. But what we've got to really realize here is that these are the people who hold the levels of power. These are people who have influence over the justice system. I also think it reminds everyone that becoming a lawyer isn't actually all that, because I watched some of these hearings, and if that's what a lawyer is, then I think we're all paying our lawyers a little bit too much these days.
I know, right? And I think it speaks to this larger problem as well, like you were hinting at, that, you know, we in the general public, we're just losing so much trust in those who are supposed to be professionals, right? Whether it be in the court of law or, as we saw with the healthcare professions with COVID and the elections and everything else. It seems like those who are in positions of power, who are supposed to be professional, aren't acting all that professional. So what we're seeing here now, I think that undermines even more faith, as you were talking about, but also with the fact that the judge in this case had made a donation in the past to Willis. Again, I know it's just a tiny donation, about $150, and this happened now almost 4 years ago, but I mean, it doesn't look too good, does it?
No, absolutely. And let's also play the game of, shoe on the other foot. What if this was a set of Republicans going after a Democrat and the judge happened to donate to Republicans at the same time? People would be losing their mind. But I think you hit the nail on the head talking about trust, is that whether it be elections or the justice system, really any institution in our country, trust is what feels like an all-time low right now. And you can see why, because every institution is really doing things that are just shamelessly corrupt, shamelessly spitting in the face of any kind of system of checks and balances. Really, no one cares at this level of power. And I think it's really quite disgusting. And then they say things like, oh, why is democracy under attack? It's like, well, democracy isn't under attack. It's just people don't really trust it when people like this are running the show. And I think unless we actually have some kind of reset, trust is only going to decline, because why wouldn't it? People can see what is happening. They can hear what is happening. They can read what is happening. You have to be stupid to see this and just think, yeah, I can trust this system. It's really worrying for the future.
It really is, and I'm so glad that you brought up some of those adjectives as well, because I think it segues into another headline that I want to bring up with you tonight that kind of keeps on this theme of losing trust and corruption in the background and all the rest. But CBS, they're saying, revenues are down, and so we have to make layoffs, and ooh, it was a really difficult decision, but we're going to ask one of the only really, real journalists that we have left. She's not someone, Catherine Herridge, of course, I'm speaking about, that doesn't really show a whole lot of partiality to either side. And whoops, she's the one who conveniently gets the axe. But then on top of that, though, the even worse move here is that they're keeping all of her confidential files. And, I guess in the journalism world, that's a huge no-no, that journalists keep those files with them no matter what network they're contracted with. But the fact that CBS has taken all of her information and that they're going to peruse through it and see which documents they'll give back to her and which they'll keep is a massive breach of trust. And of course, a lot of the fear is that Herridge had been reporting a lot on Biden and Hunter Biden and all the nasty web there, and the head of CBS and the rest weren't all too happy. So what do you make of this situation? Does it seem politically motivated?
Oh, of course it's politically motivated. I think anything that comes within 100 miles of Hunter Biden has become politically motivated. The most successful crack addict of all time. And if you even ask questions about corruption, people will either throw you in jail or say you're a maniac who's lost their mind. I think this is really concerning. But to zoom out and stop talking about Hunter Biden for a second, the fact that we have journalists, like real journalists, who are kind of being threatened or pressured into giving up information or forcibly having information taken away, who is ever going to speak to a journalist again? If you are, say, a whistleblower, or you're concerned about corruption at the highest level of government, and you don't feel you can actually go and speak confidentially to a journalist because one day the bigwigs at that company will just access that information and hand it off to their friends in the federal government, why would you ever open your mouth again? It's just yet another area of trust in our society that's being destroyed. You can't trust journalists. You can't trust politicians if you ever could. You can't really trust the justice system. Who can you trust these days? And it's really concerning because both sides of the aisle are facing this problem and no one's really doing much to actually fight it because power is the goal. Trust isn't the goal. Certainly trust from the general population is not the goal. So when you have people in pursuit of power over all else, and this includes these massive media companies, I think trust just falls down the trash can, unfortunately.
And that's so important, as you point out, how the chilling effect, it's not just on journalists, because that would be the obvious conclusion to draw, and there is some of that, but like you're saying, even more importantly than that, those who are out in the world right now who know inside information about all sorts of stuff going on, who feel that they have a duty to bring this information to light, like you're saying, where are they going to go now? Because before, they could talk to a journalist, and Catherine Herridge, actually, she's part of a lawsuit from her time back at Fox in 2017, where she is arguing with a court right now, and they're threatening to hold her in contempt because she won't give up her confidential sources, right? That's how important it is, and that's why people feel safe to come forward whenever they do, because they know there's that trust and there's that bond. But as you said, when they completely sever that and destroy it, it has that chilling effect. And I'm pretty sure CBS is one of those networks when it came to the Jeffrey Epstein stuff that they had a lot of craziness going on there that they cover it up, but, cover up that. And yet here on the Herridge situation with Biden, oh, let's just open up the files and rummage through. The disparity is just so obvious at this point. Now, I know Herridge says that the union, SAG-AFTRA, they actually made some noise about this. I was actually surprised to see they put out a big statement about how much they disagree with what CBS is doing, how it infringes on the First Amendment. But do you think even with this union support for Herridge, do you expect anything to change for CBS, or do you think they're going to just keep continuing with this?
I don't really expect anything to change just because the target of this is just too big and, in their eyes, too important. Like, you're going after the Biden family. There are such obvious levels of corruption with the Biden family, of money going left, right, and center. Like Hunter Biden paying his dad tens of thousands of dollars a month for rent, his paintings, which I could do blindfolded, half drunk, he's selling for hundreds of thousands of dollars. The corruption is so obvious, and yet these people are walking around running the country and everyone's just closing their eyes and pretending it's not happening. And so I think if you're a journalist who's brave enough to even go near Hunter Biden, this is what's going to happen. Because when you go after people who are corrupt, they pull the levers of power within their corrupt world to try and stop you. And so I hope this encourages more journalists to keep pushing, keep asking questions. But unfortunately, a lot of people in the media don't really care about the truth when it impacts their side. A lot of people in the media care about the truth, but a lot don't. And when it's the Democrats, they're quite happy to help paper over the cracks. But wait until a Republican comes back into power, and then suddenly the quest for truth will start again. It really is just corruption and immorality, really, throughout the industry, and I think it has to change.
It really is. I think I had Phelan McAleer on the show maybe 2 years ago at this point. He had a documentary called My Son Hunter. Remember, he was on the show and he was explaining how Hunter Biden set some of his lawyers all the way out. I think the country was Romania they were filming it. I mean, they were just filming thousands of miles away from the U.S. And yet all of a sudden there's this random guy who appears on set. He's asking a lot of questions. He's trying to be chummy with everyone. And they're able to suss out later that he was actually a lawyer for Hunter Biden. And he wanted to snoop around the film set and see exactly what they were doing. So you're exactly right. You go within 10 feet of the story in any serious way. And I mean, you feel the burn. But does that also really, as you were talking about this quest for truth, show how important it is that a lot of these big names like Barry Weiss and the rest are now going independent? They're going on Substack, they're going on Rumble, they're going on some of these alternate ways of being able to reach viewers, because right now being contracted with these big names, right, CBS and the rest, it's almost like signing a death warrant on what you'll be able to say and what you won't be able to say. Does it really show how important it is, the work that you do with your podcast and OAN and so many others, how important it is what we do?
Absolutely. I mean, independent media is really the answer to this, because then you're not beholden to someone pulling the strings in the background. There's still a lot that these big media companies can accomplish, because usually they have the kind of resources that, I could barely dream of. But the fact is, when there are people out there on platforms like Substack, coming onto your show on OAN, things like that you can actually just speak the truth and not be as worried about the consequences. These are very small, granular things we can be doing to actually be fighting for the truth. If the only way of speaking out is on a handful of networks or on a handful of newspapers or a handful of radio shows, and they're all controlled by the same group of people, the truth will never get out. So I think diversity of actual opinion, diversity of thought through independent media is a great way we can at least fight back and get the truth out there. Whether or not people will listen is another battle we have to fight, but getting the truth out there is the first step.
And hence why they've awoken this giant censorship industrial complex, right, to try and squash it all, because we're saying the things that they don't want those to know. Ian, thanks for joining us tonight.